So we are now moving into our last two things to study with this chapter that has lasted forever. If you think we've been on this same stuff since we came back from our winter break. And our last two things we're looking at are the Crusades and the Black Death or the Plague. The Crusades are a long, drawn-out military action. They start in the 11th century and go to the 13th century. And these Crusades are a group of men who go on a military campaign to regain the Holy Land from the Muslims. That Holy Land, again, would be modern-day Israel. It's all of those places associated with the beginning of Christianity. Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Nazareth, all of those places. And these campaigns are going to be called the Crusades. These men are on a crusade to, again, free that place from the Muslims. So this begins when Pope Urban II agreed to provide military assistance to Alexis I. And in 1095, which there's your last date, Pope Urban II urged Christians to take up arms in a holy war. So this will be, again, one of the things that makes the time period for the Catholic Church very different and unusual, and perhaps what you think about is in that setting today, that the leader of that church is asking men to go to war. And that will be significant. Can we please close up our laptops? That will be significant when we think about men answering that charge. So when men go to Mass, at the beginning, the priest is going to read this dictate from the Pope about this holy war. And as a result of that, men will answer that call, and they will be part of this crusade in 1095. So what we're looking at is, why would men do this? Why would men go on crusades? And again, this is an important question because I make you write a whole lot of stuff. Most importantly is they are moved by a religious cause. They hear about this war in their place of worship from the leader and the father of their church. This is something you are called to do. This is a mission for your church, is to go on this crusade for a religious reason. So that is really one of the first things that we think about. The second two are normally a part of human nature. It's the reason why many people join the military today. They're seeking adventure. Military branches of the military often use that as part of their advertising campaign. You know, see the world, join the Navy. So these are that same mentality that I'm looking for adventure. This is a boring, monotonous life. The third one is, again, something that's innate in a lot of people, just like in 1095 as it is in the 21st century, this warrior mentality, this idea of seeking out wrongs to make right. The last three are really important in the idea of changing the status of your life. If you are a low-level knight, there's not a lot of opportunity you have to either increase the territory that you have or gain riches or perhaps move to a new title other than warfare. We still have that opportunity for men serving in battles called battlefield commissions, where if you're an enlisted person and you make a name for yourself on the battlefield, you do something heroic, they can give you a commission, a battlefield commission. It happens a lot in World War II. And it's really the same thing for these men, is the idea that they could perhaps gain a title. And these riches, again, will be very wealthy riches. And again, that comes from the looting and all the stuff that occurs afterwards. So men are really drawn to participate in these crusades. For those of you that are familiar, this will be the beginning of the Templar Knights. They will have as part of their crusade, this separate little division that they will remain as part of with the church. So when we look at the Crusades, they take place over about 200 years, but they don't fight the entire time. And in particular, we're going to focus on 4 distinct crusades that you need to know about. And our first crusade is important because it's the only one that the Europeans win. This is it. And really the only reason they win is because of surprise. This is again in 1099. There's not any kind of advance warning notice. There's definitely not any kind of round-the-clock news network that's telling of this invading force. So it really is a surprise. Crusaders went down the Palestinian coast. They reached Jerusalem. They take the city, and these Crusaders are going to massacre thousands of people living in those cities. The victors create 4 Crusader states. And again, your little brain at this point should say, oh, that's probably not good. There's going to be 4 things that these people have to defend. And it will be much easier for me as the attack will come from the Muslims to attack one at a time instead of one giant force. And that's exactly what happens. The Muslims are going to regroup and start attacking those states one at a time, and all of them, again, eventually will fall back into the hands of the Muslim empire. And again, the Europeans are forced to regroup, come back to try to get in to that area once again. So that leads us to our second crusade. And this time our Saint Bernard, who at the time is not a saint, seeks help of King Louis VII of France and Emperor Conrad of, and actually he's not Conrad of Germany, it's of Bavaria, to take back the city. So this begins our second crusade. And again, Europeans are going to lose miserably this time. They won't even get the chance to win because those Muslims are ready for them to get there. So if we think about the type of battles that are occurring during this time period, it's important to think about the topography, where they're fighting. They're fighting in and on hot, deserty territory. These knights are coming in all of their regalia. They've got their underclothes on. They've got chainmail. They've got their coats of armor, suits of armor, and they don't really do well in places where it's 100 degrees. They also are bringing in their horses, which are horses that are used for the purposes in England, which are very different than the horses that need to run across sand and desert. The Muslims are fighting in loose garb, a lot of them on camels, and a lot of them on these horses called Arabians, which are made to run in sand. So the difficulty for these crusaders is not only are they fighting a very military foe who are excellent at fighting, they're also fighting in conditions that make it more difficult for them before they even start. So before they even step foot into these battle conditions, those crusaders are already at a disadvantage because of what they're wearing, what they are what they're riding around on, and not being prepared for the conditions in which they have to fight. So those 2 crusades are going to end very miserably for the Europeans. Our third crusade is where we meet Richard, and that will be part of your reading today. This is King Richard, the son of Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine, which I told you we're going to put him on the back burner and meet him again. So in 1187, Jerusalem is going to fall to Saladin. Saladin is the most important Muslim leader fighting against these crusades. So these 3 Christian leaders agree again to a third crusade. We have to get Jerusalem back. If we don't get anything else, we need Jerusalem. So we have three people. We have the Emperor Frederick Barbarossa, Richard I of England, and Philip II Augustus of France. This crusade is going to fail again. First one, before we even get there, Friedrich is going to die swimming. He's going to drown. Philip goes back home. He has been not very forthcoming and honest, and his goal was to get Richard out of England so he could attack England. So as they're making their way to the Holy Land, they make a deal that Richard would be the first to attack. Philip would follow second. And Philip waits until Richard gets to a point of no return and then turns around and goes back to France and starts attacking England, which is why John has to help out. Richard, and the reason he gets his name Richard the Lionheart, and the reason that he is remembered for these crusades, is he will be the only group of crusaders that will say to Saladin, all right, we give up, but all we want is access to Jerusalem. Can you please grant us peaceful access to Jerusalem so that Christian pilgrims can come and visit this city in peace? And Saladin agrees to that. So the Third Crusade, while the Holy Land is not returned to any European, the Muslims allow Christians access to Jerusalem. And for this first time period, it's really just during two time periods, during the holy season of Easter and during the Christmas seasons, that Christians can make pilgrimages to Jerusalem. So in that aspect, Richard was successful. You're going to read about one of his battles today. The problem then for Richard is when he goes home, he's kidnapped and held for ransom in Germany, and nobody wants to pay his ransom. And he kind of just sits there. His brother doesn't want to pay his ransom because if King John pays his ransom, then that means Richard comes back and he has to give up all of his power. His mom is trying to gain his power. His wife doesn't want them to pay his ransom either because she's kind of enjoying him not being at home. So he kind of just hangs out in Germany for a couple of years before his ransom is paid. So the Third Crusade gives Europeans access to one of those holy cities. And then we're going to finally end up with this Fourth Crusade, which is not about anything at all religious. After Saladin dies, Pope Innocent III says this is an awesome opportunity for a Fourth Crusade, except his goal is no longer to get into the Holy Land. His goal is now to reduce the city of Constantinople and to take back over the Eastern Orthodox Church. So instead of these crusaders heading to the Holy Land and Jerusalem and Palestine, he gets them heading into Constantinople. And they will destroy the city of Constantinople as a result of what is supposed to be a religious crusade. And this is where we begin changing this church from just a religious entity to a political entity. And starting in 1204, the role of the church in Europe is going to drastically change. It's going to take 300 years for someone to get upset about it, Martin Luther, and talk about that this church is not a religious thing anymore. It's a political body when it should not be. So anybody have questions about that? So those are the four crusades. You need to know something about each one of them. So make sure you have those attached to each other. You don't need to know anything about this one, but I just like teaching it because it's weird. Children's Crusade. Nicholas of Cologne, and Cologne is up in northern Germany, now modern Denmark. He's kind of like the Pied Piper of children. And so he is going to take children on a crusade. Children, little kids. He takes them to the Pope for a blessing. The Pope says, no, don't do this. Little kids, go home. Nicholas, who by our standards would probably be considered slightly deranged mentally, he says, forget it, I'm taking these kids anyway. They don't have weapons. He's just taking kids. And I'm not kids. He puts them on a boat anyway. 20,000 of these kids are going to set off into the Holy Land. The ship is going to drown. The ship is going to sink. Most of the children are going to drown. And those children that survive will be sold into slavery in Africa. It is horrific. One of the most awful, awful parts of this crusade that is not part of what the Pope wanted to do, but an offspring of a seriously delusional man. Our last slide of this giant pack of notes is the results of the crusade. This is what goes on. Why is 1095 significant? And this will be where we start our next chapter and looking at the Renaissance. The results of the crusade will bring incredible wealth to the Italian city-states. Italy juts out into the Mediterranean, and it makes a really great stopping point for those men heading to the Crusades and then coming back home. As men head to the Crusades, there's two ways, obviously, to get to the Holy Land. One is overland, which takes a long time, and then you hop on a boat in Italy and sail across. The other is by water, sailing along the coast of Europe, coming through the Straits of Gibraltar into the Mediterranean Sea. But regardless of which way you go, Crusaders had to make a stop in Italy, in those Italian city-states. And when they stopped at those Italian city-states to refuel before they got into battle. So that meant knives, swords sharpened. That meant chainmail fixed. That meant new shoes for their horses. That meant catching up on any kind of food that you needed. And you had to purchase all of those things. So those purchases made the Italian city-states wealthy. On the way back home, we do the opposite. And those of you that have parents that travel, your expectation when they get home is that they brought you something. Hopefully they actually bring you something from where they're at and not remember as they're in the airport and say, oh my gosh, I got to bring something home for my kid. And you get a t-shirt from the airport. Not that that ever happened in my house. My husband, famous t-shirts from the airport with all these cool places that he travels to. But you expect something. And so these knights coming home have the same expectation. They've been gone for a long period of time. So on the way back home, they stop again in Italy, but this time they're after presents. They're after carpets and silk and perfume and art and gold, all kinds of things that these Italian city-states can provide. So as a result of this, they become incredibly wealthy. They are like the pilot stations of the highway. They get stopped in for both ways. So that, again, will be one of the important results of the Crusades, those incredible riches to these cities in Italy. That's a check plus. That's going to send us straight into this awesome time period called the Renaissance. The negative aspect of this is the attacks on Jews. If Christians must slay infidels, and that's what the Pope tells them to do when they head to the Holy Land to kill Muslims, then they must slay the Christ killers as well. And this will be this first beginnings of anti-Semitic attacks on Jews across Europe. And again, especially for those of you that are not as familiar with this continued attack on people of the Jewish faith, it does not begin with Hitler in World War II. It's just a continuation of what had happened in Europe since the 12th century, that people of the Jewish faith had to wear some kind of clothes signifying that they were Jews. Oftentimes it was a certain cap that was a different color. So wearing Jews in Germany in the 1930s having to wear a Star of David was not anything new. Jews were made to live in one place. They were made to live in ghettos, and they had curfews that they couldn't leave, and they had to be back in the gates and locked in at certain time periods. So these anti-Semitic attacks on Jews begin right after the Crusades and will continue up until the 20th century. That definitely is a negative aspect of the results of the Crusades. So, any questions about that? Yes, sir.
Can you go back to the first crusade?
The first? Oh, just where it says Crusades. So, you have a reading on King Richard and the siege of Acre to read. Is that the right one, or you need one more? That one?
Yeah.
Sorry. And those of you that are up to date where you need to be on your timeline, you have the last timeline. I am going to change that timeline date until Monday so that you have time to get that finished without feeling like you have to rush. And then Monday, we are going to watch a documentary on the Dark Ages, and then we'll finish up on Tuesday and Wednesday with our look at the Black Plague. And then we'll be ready for our test on this big, giant chapter next Friday. There are lots of really good movies about the Crusades. If any of you are interested, Orlando Bloom is in one of them, and now I forget the name of it.